It changed my life so much in such a short period of time that I couldn't think of anything better that I could do to change the world and change people's lives than teach them this technique. A symptom is a red light. Disease is a red light. That is a signal that your body's telling you that there's something not quite right here. There's something that needs to change. And what's happening, unfortunately, is a lot of what we're doing in the world is just trying to treat the symptom and make the symptom go away without really addressing the underlying cause of that symptom. You know, I had one lady I was teaching, she was like maybe about 87, 88. And she came out of the meditation, the first meditation she'd ever done in her life. And she said, this is the first time in my life I can remember that I've ever felt peace. And that was the first time in all my life I can remember that I slept through the night.
I've been reading up on your LinkedIn a little bit. So I understand you're an ex-broker and now you're turning into meditation, which seems like two very different worlds, I guess. But could we start off with what we mean by meditation? Because I think people have different connotations. And what exactly is like Vedic meditation, which is something you've sort of spoken about?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we put meditation into many categories. People say that they're meditating when they are doing ballroom dancing or when they're doing swimming laps in the pool. And there's lots of ways that we can get into a kind of a meditative state, which is that we're very present and we're very mindful. And there's also meditations where we're actually into the future, where we're doing visualizations, or it might be looking at the past and having gratitude for experiences that we've had, even if they're uncomfortable. So there's lots of ways we can meditate, and there's no right or wrong. It just depends on what we want to experience with that meditation. So you might be realigning your chakras, or you might be, like I said, having gratitude, or you might be trying to focus on one particular outcome. Where Vedic meditation comes in, it's a very different style of meditation, and the student gets a mantra, which is a primordial sound or resonance that is a frequency that has this beautiful capacity to move the brain from being in beta brainwave state, which is a very active, thought-filled state where we're thinking a lot, down into a deep meditative state called delta brainwave frequency. And the resonance of that mantra that the student repeats ever so faintly inside their head without moving their tongue or the lips, these are specific sounds cognized by ancient seers. And this puts the mind into these deeper states of meditation that we call this transcendence, where you transcend beyond your thinking level. So it's a very powerful, very easy meditation, but one I found it to be the most effective for me.
Yeah, right. Okay. So this is this the same as transcendental meditation?
Very similar, yeah. It's the same thing as transcendental meditation, just a different way of expressing it.
Okay, gotcha. So is this coming from a particular religious sort of background, or do you need to have a certain theology in order for this to work, or cosmology, I suppose, or
Yeah, I
you
think
know?
it'd be more a theology or philosophy. We call it the Vedas, and the Vedas is
Mhm,
an ancient body of knowledge called the science of life, and it looks at
mhm.
the mechanics at a quantum level of existence and reality beyond the world of form and phenomenon into the subtle field. And it's got a beautiful depth of knowledge that comes with it. It's not associated or correlated with a religion. Buddhism, Christianity, even Hinduism, a lot of this has been born out of the Vedas. This is something that predates pretty much all religions. It's around 5 to 6,000 years old. So it's predating all religions that became a sort of structured form out of the Vedas.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I think a lot of the traditions deep down do have the sense of like the sound, for example, having a deep sort of uh, reality, which is not something we can touch and feel, but there's
Mm.
something deeper within. That's amazing. What, I guess, if somebody was to think about this and go, okay, right, if I was to start this practice, what are some of the actual outcomes that come about practicing this consistently? What have you seen? And if you could share some case studies or examples of people that you have seen transform, what does that look like?
Yeah, firstly, we had a student this morning. We have a group meditation on my Zoom call.
Mm,
Every time someone learns to meditate, they get access to our community of group meditations that we hold on a weekly basis. And she was telling me after doing the course just on the weekend that she can't remember in her life when she didn't wake up during the night. And last night was the first night in many, many years that she didn't wake up during the night. She slept all the way through. And we see this time and time again where people stop having anxiety, panic attacks, depression, insomnia. These are all the things that I went through and why I became a teacher after leaving finance, because it changed my life so much in such a short period of time that I couldn't think of anything better that I could do to change the world and change people's lives than teach them this technique. So a lot of the things we see are people sleeping better, people being less emotionally charged or reactive, people becoming a lot more calm, a lot more peaceful, people having less anxiety, less depression, people getting more productive, more successful. And that's because we've reduced the allostatic load in the body. That's the stress response. The stress builds up in the body. That's the wear and tear of daily life. And this meditation is so powerful at reducing that wear and tear, reducing that allostatic load that's in the body. And that's why people start sleeping better, because their sleep doesn't have to work as hard anymore, and there's less stimulation in their mind and nervous system.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's something that people don't realize is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. This idea of we have these two systems. One is the fight or flight, go, 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 and the other one is rest and relax. And oftentimes in modern day society, we are in always go, go, go mode, where oftentimes we're eating, for example, on the go, driving, having lunch, and it's not giving yourself that time to relax and yeah. So I can understand where that would be helpful, not just from a sleep better and relax better, but actually makes you more productive and makes you more efficient in what you're doing as well.
Yeah, look,
Um,
absolutely. This was my situation. Before I learned to meditate, I was riddled with anxiety and panic attacks and insomnia, depression, eventually agoraphobia. Had to take mental health leave from work. And it wasn't that the work was a problem, it's just that I hadn't used any tools or techniques to help release that allostatic load, that stress response. So my body was operating in fight, flight, in sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, day in, day out. And this is very detrimental to our well-being, very detrimental to our relationships, very detrimental to our careers. And the beautiful thing is that we can operate consistently from the parasympathetic, the peace response. And unfortunately, what's happening is a lot of people are in the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, which is causing all sorts of anomalies in our well-being. And then we're going to doctors, and the doctors is not addressing the sympathetic nervous system state. They're just giving them a tablet and hoping the problems will go away, which is not going to solve the problem.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, which is why I'm a big proponent of holistic
Mm,
exercise or holistic health. Um,
absolutely.
if if you wouldn't mind, could you share a bit more about your story? I mean, however much you're willing to share, but I guess looking back at it now, you might probably have a different lens. If you could talk to that younger self who was in that state, I guess what were the signs that you can now see, or maybe you were aware of then, but and I guess with the spirit of if someone is in that position now, they can start to tell those
Mm.
red flags are there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the use of the word red flags, because the way I look at this is that our body is a vehicle, and the vehicle is something that moves you from point A to point B. And that's really what our body's doing. It moves you from the lounge room to the bathroom, it moves you from the bathroom to the kitchen, it moves you from your home to your work. And this vehicle has certain requirements, just like your car. And if you don't look after the vehicle very well, it starts to show up a red light on the dashboard. Now, when we get a red light on the dashboard of our vehicle, our car, we then have to stop doing what we're doing and go and lift up the bonnet and have a look at what's caused the red light to come on.
Hmm.
This is what a symptom is. A symptom is a red light.
Right.
Disease is a red light. That is a signal that your body's telling you that there's something not quite right here. There's something that needs to change.
Mm.
And what's happening, unfortunately, is a lot of what we're doing in the world is just trying to treat the symptom and make the symptom go away without really addressing the underlying cause of that symptom. And so for me, as a broker, I was trading frenetically all day long. So it's extremely high octane and a lot of cortisol, a lot of adrenaline, just
Mm.
screaming and yelling, very Wolf of Wall Street. And then at nighttime, would be out drinking and partying and doing lots of crazy things back in the late 80s, early 90s. So use your imagination. We won't go into it, but it was pretty wild times. And I had very little sleep. And so this was leading to a lot of signals, a lot of
Mm.
symptoms. And like I said, there was anxiety, and then there was insomnia, and then there was panic attacks, and there was
Mm.
depression. We're not destined to have these anomalies. These are ways of our body trying to tell us to change the way we're doing things, to address the current anomalies that are showing up. But I was very ignorant and not listening to those messages. I was kind of like blocking the noise out. And of course, things just exacerbate and get worse and worse until we adapt and change. So going back to your question, what things would I say to myself would be tune into your body more, to really listen. And for me, going out at 11 o'clock at night was standard for me on a lot of nights. But if I was able to listen to my body, my body would have been crying out to me to say no, stop, pause, take a break, rest. And so now these days, I really tune into that fine level of feeling that my body is giving me to guide me into more harmonious and healthy ways of living so that I can optimize my human experience. It's ultimately what we're here for.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Trouble, of course, is it's you got to be in the right state of mind to actually listen to those
Absolutely.
signals as well, right? So you can say the same thing, and then it may fall on deaf ears, and then yeah, when a different person in a different state of mind actually becomes more effective. Um, okay, great. So I guess one thing I wanted to ask is who is this really for, in the sense of like I work with on the one hand, we've got people that are corporate, they come in and do regular exercise and stuff, and they are living the kind of life, maybe not quite the life that you're describing, but lots of high stress and there's a lot going on. And then there's other people that, are literally sitting at home all day with a, let's say, long-term disability. Some of them are actually bedbound, but they also have worries and concerns and things like that. So, is this something that, on both of those ends of the spectrum, is this something that can help? Is there some people that it doesn't really work for? Could you sort of share a bit more about that?
Yeah, it works for everyone. I've worked with 7-year-old and 8-year-old children in classrooms, taught them how to meditate, and it's had a phenomenal effect on those children, quite remarkable. I've taught with elderly in nursing homes that are
Mm,
sitting around all day, a lot of them in the final years of their lives,
mm,
and it's been phenomenal for them. I had one lady I was teaching, she was like maybe about 87, 88, and she came out of the first meditation she'd ever done in her life, and she said, "This is the first time in my life I can remember that I've ever felt peace." And
wow.
it was just a sadness in some ways to think that that was the life that she led. But the
Mm,
good thing was that she finally had experienced some level of peace and tranquility by quietening her mind. And I've worked with some of the most senior CEOs and founders of organizations, um, multi-billionaires, and I've worked with homeless people that have
mm,
been living on the street. So there's no one that it discriminates against. It's relevant for everyone. And if you're at home with the inability to sort of travel too far or go to work, you've got a disability, it's the most incredible tool for you to use because it's going to help you find that peace in that situation, because that situation might not be meeting your ideal expectations, but to find peace in that situation is what's really important. As a CEO, then it's really important for that as well, because it's going to enable you to reach greater levels of peak performance, a greater optimization, have a greater resetting and releasing of the allostatic load, that's the stress response, the wear and tear. So it allows you to maintain peak performance more effectively through using just a simple 20-minute meditation.
wow, that's amazing. I love that story of that 87-year-old because it's one of those things where we have one of our taglines is, we help you live more. And sometimes people misinterpret that to say we help you live longer, which I don't believe I can actually do. But it's about the time that you have. How do you make the most of it? How do you improve your quality of life? And so, even if you're 87, even if you happen to be in a nursing home, it's those days that you can try and optimize as best as possible. And
Yeah.
whatever we can do to do that, that would be amazing. Um, Going down that idea of, so we've already talked about the need and what the red flags are. What's some of the, I guess, misconceptions or barriers or maybe some pushbacks that you hear often? And one that comes to mind that I'll get your thoughts on is like I've got a work cover client now who's got lots of issues, lots of physical issues, but also mental and stress and things like that. And, I try and help him as best we can. He's working with a psychologist as well. And one of the things he often say to me is like, look, these sessions are great. And I really appreciate the advice, but the problems don't go away. And so what's your response to that? But also tying into any other misconceptions that you often hear or pushbacks that you hear from this type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to get a little bit of woo woo on you here,
Yeah.
if everyone's okay with that. So, what we're starting to learn now, and this information has been around since like the 1920s when Napoleon Hill came out with his book Think and Grow Rich.
Mm,
Um, when we have recurring problems, interestingly, what we're starting to discover is our inner state affects our outer world rather than our outer world affecting our inner state, which is the case for most people. Our outer world affects our inner state, and we're trying to change our outer world so our inner state can change. But because our inner world is in a particular state, and it might be disturbance, shame, guilt, anger, frustration, lack, fear, what happens is that vibrational resonance that we're emitting, and this is a frequency that is a phenomenon that's starting to be realized, these are hertz, Hertz, we emit this frequency that sets off this sort of chain of events and circumstances that at times can create what we attract into our life. And so if we're getting these recurring problems, recurring unpleasant situations in life, we have to really look at our inner world and our inner state, and what are we choosing, what are we doing. And sometimes circumstances and situations do happen to us, and that's just life can be pretty brutal at times, and some people get some really challenging lives. But what we want to do is we want to find a way to claim sovereignty, that is to have a state that we create ourselves that is independent of circumstances and situations. Interestingly, when we get more calm, more at peace inside of ourselves, more serene, what we tend to find is we have greater capacity to solve the problems and to find a way through the problems and to find a way to get on the other side of the problems. And I made an entire film on this that was one of the longest running films in Australia, called The Portal, which everyone can watch for free on our website, entertheportal.com. And it looks at crisis, and everyone goes through crisis at some point in their lives. And crisis is not a punishment or something for us to be victim of. It's something for us to evolve through. And of course, some crises are much more challenging than others. So, and some people have much more beneficial lives or easier lives than others. But for some people that have had extreme crises, and that's what we show in the film, they were still able to climb their way out of that. And they used meditation as a tool to find greater clarity, greater composure, greater inner harmony, greater peace. And that allows them to find the solutions to the problems, but also to start attracting more of what they are inside of them, more harmonious experiences, more consistency, more fluidity, more in flow in life, because of their inner state is more harmonious as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. I mean, I was talking to my wife yesterday about some, as young parents, we often have these kids that throw tantrums and whatnot. And you find that some parents will start labeling their kids as, oh, this is just a terrible child, or they're going through terrible twos. And it's a sort of a thing that we've tried to resist, and
Mm,
I've tried to sort of work on amongst ourselves to not label the child, but say just that particular day or that particular issue is bothersome, because I think that sort of speaks to this idea of your inner state will then affect the outer reality. Once you think that this child is troublesome, then everything becomes troublesome, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, so true.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, I mean, at least for myself personally, having a religious worldview, it helps, where you've got a spiritual element. And what you're describing, is I would probably put that down to, well, then God's, will then inspire and change the world around you. And you can make sense of even those troubles and the tribulations, because at least in the Muslim worldview, we believe that God doesn't put upon you any hardship greater than what you can bear.
Mm,
And so if you've got really hard hardships, it's almost a sign that he trusts you enough to be able to take it on. And if you go through it in the right way, this will be good for you in the grand scheme of things.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, okay. All right, so let's get to some practical things.
Mm.
So someone's listening to this going, wow, that sounds amazing. I need to do this right now. What are some of your, I guess, first steps to getting started? Could you give us some practical things that people can do?
Yeah, the way this is delivered and trained is that there's a 90-minute session training program. It's quite an involved process. You can jump on an app, and there's lots of apps out there, Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, where you can find thousands of meditations that will take you through a process. And there's 2 steps that I believe to really having an effective meditation practice. One
Yep.
is having a technique that you find accessible, that you enjoy, that you get tangible, quantifiable benefits from it. If you're not finding that you're getting any benefits, you're just not going to keep doing it. So there's a lot of meditations out there that you're just simply not going to find the tangible, measurable benefits from it. Like the lady I told you about that this morning, she
Mm.
said, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. That was the first time in all my life I can remember that I slept through the night. There's a tangible benefit that she could measure from just the weekend course. So you want to find a technique that works for you. But you also want to have enough supporting knowledge. And one thing that comes with this technique is a lot of underpinning of knowledge that upholds the technique. And when we get experience and knowledge, what happens is that these two work together cohesively. And if we just have technique without the knowledge, because what's going to happen with some meditations is you're going to have very busy meditations, you're going to have sensations arise within the meditation. We had one lady yesterday that had very uncomfortable sensations in her meditation. And with the right supporting knowledge and the teacher to guide you through that, we could deduce that what was happening was that she was releasing a lot of deep stresses that were stored in her body. And this is a lot of the knowledge that we talk about in the course. So I usually recommend look for a technique that you can resonate with, that you're aligned with, that you find benefits from. Find a teacher that's going to teach you. I find that if you just do a meditation that's on an app or something like that, there's so much can come out of learning to meditate, from releasing of stresses, having emotions arising, all sorts of things can happen. And having a teacher that supports you, guides you, and is consistently there well after the course is a really important part in learning to meditate. So there's three main components. One is the technique that you resonate with. One is, does it come with a lot of knowledge and support, supporting information? And thirdly, is there a support system with the qualified teacher that's been qualified in the art of teaching you the meditation that is going to be there to consistently support you, which is something that we do with our meditation training. So I run courses on Zoom and I run courses in person in Bondi Junction, so people can access either the Zoom course if they can't leave the house or it's too far to go to Bondi Junction, or they can learn in person with me on the weekends in Zoom, in Bondi Junction.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Awesome. And you mentioned some apps. Are these apps that you guys have put out, or are they sort of available on the web, or?
No, they're apps that you'll find in your app store. So Headspace
Okay.
is an app that has some guided meditations. Insight Timer and Calm is another one that are probably the more bigger sort of apps where people can just go and access a technique from those ones if they wanted to try those. YouTube has a lot of guided meditations as well.
Okay. Amazing. And cool. And I guess if someone's wondering where do I find a teacher, I suppose you're one of those teachers, right?
Yeah, you can look up Vedic meditation and you'll find a plethora of teachers around. So if you're interstate, there's teachers up and down Australia, interstate, and teachers around the world. Some are teaching on Zoom, some aren't. But yeah, it's definitely something that I can support them with if they're looking for someone like myself. But some people might want to have a female teacher, or someone might want a younger teacher, or so.
Right.
There's no right or wrong. It's just who you resonate with the most is the one I would suggest you go with.
Got it. Got it. And I suppose what qualifies a person to become a teacher? Like, someone's asking, is this somebody who's just done it before, or is it somebody who's, like you mentioned, who's a knowledge aspect as well and whatnot?
Yeah, with the Vedic lineage, there's definitely quite a protocol. There's two
Right.
options. One is I run a teacher training program where I teach people to become teachers. So it's a
Oh, okay.
3-month training program.
Mm.
It's very involved. There's a lot of work involved because you've got to learn a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the Sanskrit, and be able to be proficient in not only just delivering the program but supporting your students through that program.
Yeah.
And part of the meditation, they learn the meditation, they can integrate that into their lives on a daily basis. But if they want to go deeper into the process, we run retreats as well where they can go away with us and do a retreat as well. So learning the art of running retreats is a big part of the teacher training.
Got it. Okay, perfect. We're getting to the pointy end of this now, so
Mm.
probably the final question, perhaps, if not two more. If there's a healthcare professional, either a GP or a nurse or someone like that who's listening to this going, this is great, um, what advice, if any, would you give to them? How could they get started, help their patients or their clients sort of, come to this world and, yeah, with the
Mm.
meditation side of things?
Yeah, some of the most stressed people I see out there are nurses, doctors,
Yeah.
and people working in that field. So I always go back to the analogy of when the oxygen masks drop on the plane and the instructions from the flight
Mm,
attendants is to always make sure you put your mask on first, because you can't help people if you're not in a good position yourself. And this is what I find: if we're in the space of facilitation or support, then we want to make sure that we have a really calm, cohesive, orderly, disease-free system that is able to be, I guess, the embodiment and the representation of what it is that we're trying to do in the world. I think it was Gandhi that said, be the happiness that you want to see in the world, or be
mm,
what you want to see in the world. And so I see a lot of health professionals in all different types of fields that actually don't represent anybody health, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Mm,
And I think, first and foremostly, start with your own, home base. And
yeah.
then from there, obviously inspire your clients to find ways to at least first and foremost calm their mind, their nervous system, and their body with a
Mm,
meditative practice. These practices have been around for 5,000 years, and there's a reason why they stood the test of time, because they're very efficient and very effective, and they play a role in sustaining health and happiness. And Dr. Bruce Lipton from Stanford University Medical School says that 95% of all sickness is a result of stress. So if we want to remove 95% of the world's sickness, we just have to look at the underlying cause of that, which was the same for me, that we have a lot of stress in our water. We've got to start with clearing that stress load out of our systems.
yeah, okay, that's amazing advice. Yeah, I think, and definitely agree with that. It's like when we meet different healthcare professionals, the ones that sort of refer the most clients for exercise are the ones that are themselves, living a healthy lifestyle and exercising, and you can, yeah. So it's a great reminder for myself as well. So, no, I really appreciate your time. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
There's a phenomenon in the Vedic tradition, having used this practice for 30 years, I can vouch for it. There's a state that we recognize that humans can reach called moksha, Moksha. Moksha means freedom from the binding effects of life, which means that life is going to throw all these unmet expectations. It's going to present situations and circumstances that you hadn't planned, hadn't envisaged, someone dinging the back of your car, or your Bitcoin portfolio going down, or your child getting sick, or you're losing your job, or interest rates going up, or the weather starting to turn on your picnic. There's going to be a myriad of different things on a daily basis that are going to consistently have this influence on us, and that can be good things or bad things. And what we want to do is we want to find a way to be free from the need for things to work out for us to feel good. If we're constantly in what we call outcome oriented fulfillment, if we're in a fulfillment state that is dependent upon outcomes, then that means our fulfillment is going to fluctuate, it's going to fall away a lot of the time, because things just won't meet our expectations. We won't get the outcomes we're looking for. What we want is what's called a self-referred state of bliss. It's a self-referred state of joy, love, and bliss that allows us to have greater equanimity through life's challenges and life situations and life circumstances. This is the critical and the important step for humanity to take, to find that part of us that is unshakable and unruffable. We all have it within us, but we have a very unstable, emotionally fluctuating world at the moment, and that leads to poor decisions, to poor outcomes, to poor health. What we want to do is have people starting to find that part of themselves that's greater stability and equanimity, and we all have that. So meditation is one of the gateways or the portals I find to getting to that.
That's amazing. That's a great note to finish on, I think. So thank you once again for your time and for sharing all that amazing wisdom. And I'll link to the description and whatnot below to your how to contact you and how people can find you. Um, but once again, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for creating the space, and thanks for anyone that's listening in the future, and hopefully you got some value out of this. And if you feel like reaching out, just reach out anytime. Look forward to hearing from you.
Amazing. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording. If you don't mind, if you have a good time, just let